the best of the rest, all this week on MeTV Carolina.
Now, a WYFF News 4 weather special, preparing for the storm.
Hurricanes are a unique force.
After one record hurricane season.
Clearly, last year we had over 30 named storms.
The WYFF News 4 weather team is preparing you for whatever this season may bring. From winds to torrential rains across the upstate and western North Carolina.
We believe it's going to be a pretty active storm season.
Our team is tracking it all tonight on Preparing for the Storm.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Justice. We're live here at WYFF 4, and tonight the WYFF News 4 weather team is helping you prepare for the storm. Hurricane season officially starts in 5 days on June 1st, but things are already firing up. You're looking live at the satellite over the Atlantic right now, and all is calm right now, which is certainly some good news. But for the 7th year in a row, hurricane season started early in May. Just 1 week ago, Tropical Storm Ana formed with winds up to 45 miles per hour near Bermuda. Now, thankfully, that system has since fizzled out. And a look at the Gulf right now and the Caribbean, things are smooth sailing. That is certainly some good news right now. To take a cruise there in the Gulf, things are looking nice right there. Now, in the next 30 minutes, we're going to cover what hurricane season has in store for us and what you need to do to ensure that you are weather aware and prepared for whatever might come our way, whether it be heavy rain, winds, or flooding. The WYFF News 4 weather team has you covered in every season. To know what is headed our way this year, we have to look at what's normal for a hurricane season along with what the new normal is. That just changed this year. In fact, check this out. As we look ahead, we're going to be looking for those systems that leave the United States that could form into some systems. In fact, the new hurricane normal has changed. So dating back to 1981 to 2010, what's normal is about 12 systems per year, 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes and 3 major hurricanes. But due to the increased activity we've had in the past 20 years, that average, or what's normal, has increased. Named storms 14, hurricanes 7, with 3 major hurricanes being what we would consider normal right there. Now, we've got a close eye on the 2021 hurricane season, especially after 2020 set records in the tropics. There were a record-breaking 30 named storms, with 12 of them making landfall in the United States. 13 of those 30 storms became hurricanes with winds at 74 miles per hour or greater. 7 of them were major hurricanes, topping out at 111 miles per hour or more. These storms broke the previous record with 28 named storms. That was in 2005. Now let's look closer at a month-by-month look at when hurricane season ramps up. Now, as you can see, the majority of hurricane season occurs between August and October, with the peak of hurricane season being around September 10th. Now, let's look closer at when those hurricanes start to give us trouble spots and where. Now, in June, that's when we start to see activity starting to bubble up close to home. You get those frontal boundaries that settle south, and because it's that time of the year, they don't quite make it south, and we can get some activity to form in the Gulf and then usually right across the state of Florida. Now, as we get into July, that's when things get a little bit more active further away from home. The Caribbean becomes a hot spot, and some of those storms can either track toward the Atlantic or through the Gulf in the Caribbean there. So we'll look for things to start ramping up then, and then as we get into August, you know that means business. That's when things really start to ramp up. A hot spot here along the Caribbean islands, and some of that activity can go through the Bahamas, or it can come into the Gulf and the Caribbean right there. And September, that's the peak of hurricane season. Like I mentioned, September 10th there, and that's when things start to happen out deeper into the Atlantic, and we have those long track hurricanes that we spend about a week tracking as it travels across the Atlantic and possibly toward the United States. And then October is when things start to ramp up in the Caribbean. We get those systems that start to follow frontal boundaries, because by this year things are cooling down and we start to get the jet stream to dip down, and that allows us to have more activity that can ride north. And then in November, it is possible to get activity to happen then, and that's when we start to look a little bit closer to home again for those stalled out frontal boundaries, and that's what we look out for in the Atlantic right in there. Now, to track hurricanes, we rely on computer models. You often hear us refer to the European or the American computer models, which give us critical guidance on those storms. Now, current data like wind speeds, directions, or cloud heights, they feed those computer models, but sometimes they don't get enough data, and we end up dealing with the best of the worst. And we can have a tough time nailing down an exact track 5 to 7 days out. In fact, let me show you some of the former computer models here with Katrina. Now, a track like this would have a much different impact for us here at home than a track over here toward the Mississippi. That's why it's key to follow those computer models, and that's how we rely on that. In fact, as we look ahead, we start to look toward our own expertise blended in with these computer models, and that's also how the National Hurricane Center's cone is made. Here's a look at the Irma track way back when. Now, you can see here that a track can mean everything. In fact, you've seen it time and time again. Our area can be in a cone only to be removed a few days later. Or the other way around, our threat can also increase. The key to remember here is that little changes to the center of circulation there can have big changes to the impact down the line. And that's what we look out for here. And I had a chance to speak with the National Hurricane Center Director, Ken Graham, about this.
Little wiggles do matter, and you could get a change in that storm by 20 or 30 miles, and that could make the difference of putting you in or out of hurricane force winds. That could be the difference in more than 10 feet of storm surge. 20 miles difference in where that storm is can make a difference in more than 10 feet of storm surge in some situations. So little wiggles matter.
Now, this season, yes, you'll see us show this track and the models all the time, but our emphasis and our commitment to you will be alerting you to the impacts with clear and concise information that can help you keep your family safe. So check back with us often as those storms develop to get the most recent information. Now, as those storms form, each one will get a different name. It's a name that's been on a waiting list. Our Dale Gilbert gives us a preview of the storms that could come our way.
Well, hi there. It's hard to believe that hurricane season is here once again. And here are the names for the 2021 season, beginning with Anna, continuing, alternating back and forth between girl and boy names through the alphabet. You'll notice there are a couple of letters that are not used, like Q and X. Think of the names, not many that go along with those letters. But what happens when a tropical cyclone out in the Atlantic or Pacific gets to the point where it has rotation of winds around that center, reaching 39 miles an hour on a consistent basis? We call it then a tropical storm, and it earns a name. And we'll go through this list of names, and the National Hurricane Center has another list that should we surpass all these names during this coming season, which goes from June 1st to November 30th, then we'll hit that second list. It could be an active season once again, but we'll continue to monitor this and bring you updates throughout the year. But again, the 2021 names are in play as we wait for the season.
All right, thank you, Dale. And a change this year with the hurricane names. Now, traditionally, if the hurricane season runs out of the 21 names for a given year, the storms would then move on to the Greek alphabet, alpha, beta, etc. Now, this year, officials decided they'll do away with that, calling the practice confusing. Yeah, I'd say so. Instead, if a season requires more than 21 names, they will default to a secondary list of names, starting with Adria, Braylon, Caridad, and Deshaun. Now, as we approach hurricane season, the Red Cross of South Carolina is hoping you'll use this time to get prepared. They say it's important to have emergency supplies and a plan laid out before a storm hits.
For hurricanes, we recommend families have a number of preparations that they make for hurricane season. The first being to know how you're going to get information. So we recommend the Red Cross Emergency Alert app that you can put in your zip code, and it will alert you when there's hazards and alerts in your area.
Oh, such a helpful tool. Now, they also recommend getting a weather radio and creating an evacuation plan, not only for here, but if you're at the coast vacationing, in case you're in an area that becomes unsafe. You should also build an emergency kit with things like water, food, a flashlight, and first aid supplies. Now, because of COVID-19, you should also include masks and hand sanitizer. For more information on how to get ready and stay safe, head to the Red Cross's website. There you can download that free app and find more resources. And just today, today. The South Carolina Department of Emergency Management unveiled a new website, hurricane.sc. They'll have all the information there that you may need to stay safe this season. It includes how to prepare and a way to find an evacuation zone if you're near the coast, and helpful resources. Now, still to come on preparing for the storm, deconstructing hurricane damage. Just how strong is a Category 5 storm? Next, we'll show you just how much water would take to overcome a beach with that level of a storm, and what would be left behind.
Coming up, we're taking you inside a wind tunnel that tests the strength of hurricane winds.
The WYFF 4 app. Download.
So travel back and enjoy Benson's Memory Lane.
Well, welcome back. We're live here in the Weather Center. One of the most dangerous parts of a hurricane, the wind, and they are powerful. The damage left behind is sometimes hard to imagine. Our Perella Lewis went to Clemson to see just how devastating those winds can be.
We're here at Clemson's Wind and Structural Engineering Research Center, which was built just after Hurricane Hugo in the late 1980s.
Because Hurricane Hugo's damage was so great across South Carolina, this wind tunnel was built to study the effects of hurricane-force winds on homes and various infrastructures.
This wind tunnel specifically aims to understand how wind affects or induces pressures on specific buildings, whether that's a unique geometry in a building or whether that's a different building configuration.
This research has already been used on various high-rise buildings across the country. And part of the study includes this launcher that hurls debris at 50 to 60 miles per hour.
Most commonly, that's a 2x4. Has a lot of mass compared to that small little area that it's impacting. We're firing in 3, 2, 1. We're going to look at what happens when we fire those debris at traditional construction materials and really the hazard that's associated with that windborne debris that's picked up in the wind. 3, 2, 1.
Sustained winds that hit 50 or 60 miles per hour can do a lot of damage in a short amount of time. But with a Category 1 hurricane starts spinning with winds closer to 100 miles per hour, that's when something like this can happen.
This is a piece that we tested where we shot it at just over 100 miles an hour. We cut it in half to see exactly what's going on, and we see the layers working together to withstand those missile impacts from really severe thunderstorms, hurricanes, or even tornadoes.
Even with layers of hard, thick wood, the fast-moving projectile penetrated it with no problem. But inside the wind tunnel itself is a different set of experiments.
The wind tunnel has many different parts. It starts with the fans where we actually we start moving the air down the wind tunnel. Really try to simulate exactly what's happening in the real world, where the wind speeds are a little bit lower, closer to the surface of the earth, and then much higher as you go up.
This wind tunnel can reach speeds of 50 miles per hour, but on a made-to-model scale, it can replicate winds that are over 100 miles per hour. And by the way, these are sustained winds. These are not wind gusts. As you can see, that is far more intense.
So with each new hurricane season, these scientists are working hard to improve our chances of not just surviving the storms, but that our homes will be a true safe place as well.
This really informs where we can build stronger and where we need to build stronger. We're trying to make safer, more reliable homes.
Perella Lewis, WYFF News 4.
Wow, thank you, Perella. Such a visual look at how those storms can impact us. Now, if a tropical storm or hurricane is headed our way, you'll likely hear us designate an impact or an alert day. You see those yellow icons. Anytime you do, it means that it's an impact day. That means out of the ordinary weather is expected that day or that hour. This will let you know when to expect especially impactful weather. Examples of an impact day are especially cold or hot days, a washout with rain, or windy days. Now, that brings us to a little little bit of a higher threat, an alert day. Anytime you see the red icon, it means that strong and severe weather is likely to impact you or your family. The red icon appears when dangerous weather is expected. Weather conditions that could prompt an alert day: flooding, tornadoes, tropical storms, and those hurricanes. Now, preparing for outages during hurricanes can leave us in the dark sometimes, but upstate power companies are preparing. A look at how next.
The fact that they're willing to have pilots, risk their lives to fly into hurricanes.
Flying into hurricanes to get the data to inform you on the storms headed our way. We'll look at that data used to keep you informed.
The WYFF4 app. Download the WYFF4 app today.
Well, welcome back. One of the main ways we learn about hurricanes is from the people who choose to fly into the storm. And that information, along with other data, all comes together to fine-tune a forecast. Our Cedric Haynes talked to the National Weather Service about how they put all that information together to issue the warnings. That's what he'll tell you when to expect.
Well, hurricane season is quickly approaching, and of course you may hear us talk about things like the hurricane hunters and the advisories that they produce, and that data goes into different computer models. Now, I know you may be wondering exactly how that helps us have better forecasts. Well, we decided to come down here to the National Weather Service to find out exactly how they take that information to help produce the accurate forecast we see today. One of the partners that we work with, the hurricane hunters who are within the organization that go out and get vital information, how do they do that, and then how does that help us with a forecast down the line?
They have a plan that once the storm gets close enough or there's threat of impacts, they will schedule a flight plan, and they'll take these planes that are sturdy enough to withstand really strong, hurricane force winds, and they will actually fly in some kind of pattern through the storm. And when they're flying, they have onboard instruments that measure humidity, temperature, pressure, wind speeds, things like that. Or just to get more information, they'll drop what they call dropsons. Or the instruments that are on both the plane and the dropsons have a radio transmitter that directly takes that data and sends a signal to the satellites, and then the satellites then transmit it to different centers like the National Hurricane Center and other places that need that data. And then that data then gets processed and put into numerical weather prediction model. And that data really does help the models make better forecasts of both the track and the intensity of these systems.
So now you know, it's not just one individual computer model that we look at to develop a forecast. We look at a lot of different computer models and a lot of different data, some of that data which comes directly from inside the storm. We put all of that information together to help make a better and more accurate forecast for you during the hurricane season. Of course, we'll be following things as we move throughout the hurricane season. For WYFF News 4, I'm meteorologist Cedric Haynes.
Thank you, Cedric. Can you imagine flying into a hurricane there? Now, how hurricanes form impacts how strong they are and what damage they're capable of causing. But when we say a Category 3 or a 4 storm is headed for the coast, what does that mean? Here's meteorologist Dale Gilbert with a breakdown of the Saffir-Simpson scale.
A typical hurricane season nowadays has 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 of those could become major. That's on average. Well, let's break down the different categories. Category 1 hurricanes begin at 74-mile-per-hour winds. That can start to do damage to power lines, tree tops, and even take a little siding off homes. 74 to 95-mile-per-hour winds are Category 1. Category 2 storms now start to produce a surge of water inland, causing some minor flooding, shallow trees could fall, more power outages occurring with those Category 2 storms. But the major ones, the Category 3 and 4 and 5, those are the ones that do the major damage, with a huge storm surge causing major flooding, power and water out for quite some time, fallen trees, and more home damage occurring. Category 4, we call that catastrophic storm damage because now it starts to take the roofs off homes. There's major flooding, power and water out for weeks at a time, and that goes from 130 to 156. Above that, Category 5 storms, they just obliterate homes. And the flooding continues on for weeks and even months at a time. Trees and power poles are down. Category 5 storms are the worst, and those are the ones we hope stay out to sea. Well, that's a quick breakdown of the 5 different categories of storms that can occur during hurricane season.
Thank you, Dale. Now, when strong storms move in, no matter the category, you should prepare for the possibility of power outages. This video is from last October. You might remember when Zeta came through the area, bringing strong winds and knocking out power to thousands. Power companies say they learn from every storm and severe weather, and they are preparing now for any storm that may cause power outages.
Technology and experience are key to understanding exactly what Mother Nature is going to bring your way. But that said, she can change her mind at the last minute. We've seen storms that'll go left or right and make a tremendous difference in the impact that that storm has to our customers.
Well, those officials say they're continually making improvements to the grid to reduce outages in the event of issues and are using new tools and technology to dispatch those crews to fix the outages quickly. If you do lose power, here are some things you want to keep in mind. Be aware of your unique situation, whether that be specific supplies you will need or a specific plan like prescription drugs, any kind of issues you might have with oxygen. Now, you can also find more information about power outages by going to duke-energy.com. Now, coming up, I've got your official WYFF News 4 hurricane forecast. I'll break down what you can expect for this year's season. Stick around.
Follow WYFF News 4 on Twitter.
WYFF News 4 today.
Well, welcome back. Here's the very latest with what I expect to see this hurricane season. With a weak La Nina, more or less, there's no El Nino, and that's a problem because El Nino helps us out in hurricane season. We also have warmer ocean temperatures, and that's also a problem because it allows for more development. Not only that, but stronger development when we do. I'm expecting an active season to be likely across the Atlantic. Now, the El Nino factor, it can often help us out. It means an active southern jet stream, and with that, it can usually, with high wind shear, tear apart hurricanes. With us being in a weak La Nina phase going into the heart of hurricane season, we just won't have that extra help to tear apart those hurricanes. So here's a look at our forecast here. Now, an average year would bring us 14 named storms. I'm expecting 18. An average year would bring us 7 hurricanes. I'm expecting 8. And when it comes to major hurricanes, like I said, with that warm ocean temperature, a typical year would bring us 3. We're likely looking at about 4. That's where we're seeing it right now. With the heart of hurricane season ramping up in September, we need to be aware at any time, though, because as we saw last year, that hurricane season can ramp up in a hurry. Now, as hurricane season approaches, be sure you have the WYFF News 4 app to get all of the alerts sent straight to your phone. My family has it. You can sign up for those notifications when potentially dangerous weather moves into your area specifically. It's free in the Apple App Store or Google Play stores. Just search for WYFF. Well, thank you for joining us this evening for our special Preparing for the Storm. As always, the WYFF News 4 weather team is committed to bringing you an accurate and complete forecast to keep you and your family safe, especially when dangerous or severe weather strikes, whether it's on air or online. Have a great night, everybody.
Save big this month.